ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ Sonia West. Welcome to Sanjhi Baat. Today in the studio we have Councillor Linda Annis. She's not here from the city. She's here from Crime Stoppers. Yes, Linda is the Executive Director of Metro Vancouver Crime Stoppers. Welcome to the studio, Linda Annis. Nice to see you. Sat Shri Akal.
Sat Shri Akal, and thank you for having me today.
Of course. It's so good to see you. And I actually didn't know that we were going to be meeting in this capacity. I was quite impressed when I learned off camera that in addition to being, a councillor for the city of Surrey, you're Executive Director of Crime Stoppers Metro Vancouver. That's quite a role.
It's a fabulous role. I've been with the organization for almost 14 years. Hard to believe, but they do such incredible work in the community in terms of helping solve cases or getting information to the police that needs to get to them anonymously.
Yeah, Crime Stoppers has been around for a long time, and we all have heard about Crime Stoppers. But what does Crime Stoppers actually do? What's the role?
So Crime Stoppers acts as the intermediary between the public and the police. Oftentimes people know something about suspected criminal activity, but for whatever reason they're not wanting to report. They may fear for their personal safety.
Right.
For an example, if they're maybe giving information about a gang member. So Crime Stoppers provides them the opportunity to report any suspected criminal activity anonymously. Doesn't matter if somebody gets arrested, goes to jail, or whatever happens, people that give us the information are protected by the Supreme Court of Canada.
Really? So you can remain anonymous, nothing to worry about?
Absolutely. When you call us, we don't take your phone number. If you happen to leave us a tip through our website, we don't trap your IP address. We won't take your name. We won't take your address. We will take absolutely no personal information.
Right.
And if you, happen to give something in your tip that might reveal your identity, we make sure that that's removed.
Okay, so the person is protected. So having people report anonymously, how has that helped in solving crimes? Has there been a difference?
It's been huge.
Yeah.
So we get almost 5,000 tips each year.
Really?
Our program has been around for 40 years now, and since the inception of Metro Vancouver Crime Stoppers alone, we've had almost 9,000 arrests as a result of Crime Stoppers tips.
Amazing.
And $500 million, not million, dollars worth of property and drugs recovered. So just think of how many lives have been saved by a lot of that illicit drugs coming off the street as a result of Crime Stoppers tips.
Crime Stoppers, the police, and general, media as well, we all try to inform the public of what's going on, crime that is happening, that kind of thing. Crime Stoppers specifically, how do you communicate with the public?
Well, we communicate in many different ways. We work very closely with the media, like today, expressing how people can use our service. We also work with community groups. We're out in the community a lot. We reach out through schools. We've reached, in the past 7 years, we've reached almost 70,000 8th grade and 10th grade students, telling them about the importance to report crime. So those are just some examples of what we do.
So Linda, when you talk about youth, you just said grade 8, grade 10, and you're reaching out. When we talk to the youth, how can we prevent youth from getting involved in crime, and how can the community support these efforts?
Well, there's many ways. First and foremost, I think kids really need to understand the life of being involved in gang or in criminal activity is not glamorous. It might seem glamorous at the time. You might be the big shot in the school or on the football field. But at the end of the day, generally speaking, if you get involved in that kind of lifestyle, there's 3 outcomes. Either you go to jail for a very long time, you lose your life, or you're just not involved in day-to-day life. You have to hide because otherwise bad things will happen to you. And young kids don't get that. So it's really important that they get educated. And it's also very important that parents and close family members pay close attention to the signs of getting involved in gang life.
Right. So when we're talking about youth, and specifically South Asian community, there's an organization, the BC Tigers, and they had recently the education seminar on January 5th. And I know that you were in attendance, and you were there on behalf of Crime Stoppers as well as the city probably. So can you speak a bit about that?
It was an excellent program. That they do this once a year, and it was so great to see so many young people, but not just were the young people there, they were there with their families. And the lesson to the kids was, don't be the big shot on the kids, on the field, I should say. Make sure that your sportsmanship, because if you have proper sportsmanship behavior,
Right.
likely you'll carry that into your other parts of your life. We talk to kids about managing, their emotions.
Right.
To get angry and get violent doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
And it's also very, very important. Again, we spoke to the parents about the need to be mindful of signs of your kids getting off stream, and very important that parents set the example. Oftentimes if there's violence at home or
Right.
parents are doing bad things, the kids tend to replicate what the parents are doing.
They do. So it starts at home.
It really starts at home.
Yeah. What are some of the misconceptions, the common misconceptions about Crime Stoppers? Because you're doing great work, but there's always going to be somebody criticizing something, and there's misinformation. So what are those misconceptions?
Lots of people think we're the police. We are not the police.
Okay.
We're a not-for-profit. We work for the not-for-profit. That's a big one.
Okay.
People oftentimes think if you call Crime Stoppers that we are the police, but we're not.
Right.
The other piece is people wonder how are we funded? Well, we're funded by the various cities and municipalities that we serve, but we also are very reliant on donations as well. We aren't government, so it's very important that we get the support from the community.
Okay. I didn't realize that people could actually donate to Crime Stoppers.
Absolutely, and if anyone ever wants to, have to get a plug in,
Yeah, for
is
sure.
just visit our website, www.solvecrime.ca.
Okay. So what are some of the other initiatives? Like there's big crimes, there's little crimes. Do you cover all types of crimes?
Any suspected criminal activity, it can be anything, from somebody driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs,
Okay.
to a homicide, to domestic violence, to children that are at risk, to animals. So anything to do with anything that is suspected criminal activity, they should call Crime Stoppers if they don't want to deal with the police. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize about Crime Stoppers that's really helpful is that we're open 24/7.
Oh.
So it doesn't matter. If you see something, call us right away.
Right.
And we also take tips in 115 different languages. So if English isn't your first language, don't worry. If you call us, we will get you a translator right away.
Did you say 115 languages?
115.
Wow.
Yes,
That's-
don't ask me to name them all, but
Speaking all of them, I'm impressed because usually it's, you've got maybe 5 tops. You've got your English and French, obviously, Canada, and then you've probably got some maybe Chinese, some Punjabi, and then maybe Filipino or language or whatever the language is. But to have
Yeah.
115, I wouldn't even know where to begin, which languages they are, but that's amazing.
It is absolutely amazing because, sometimes people come from a country where police aren't your friend,
Yes.
but they want to feel safe here, but they're nervous to call the police. And this is where Crime Stoppers really comes into play.
Right.
We reach out to a lot of the new immigrant population
Yeah.
and let them know that Crime Stoppers is an option if you're fearful for any reason to call the police.
Right. It's a liaison. It's a safe intermediary, I guess, between you and the police, because there is a feeling of mistrust with the police a lot of the time, just because of different countries having a different set of rules than what we have in Canada. So
That's so
good.
true,
Yeah.
and that's where we really come into play.
Yeah.
And it's nice. I mean, we go out to a lot of the, new people that have come to Canada
Yeah.
and try to spread the word about Crime Stoppers, but we can't do enough because, unfortunately, bad things happen in our community,
Yeah.
and the police are really count on all of us to make sure that the information gets to them.
So when people in the community want to get involved with Crime Stoppers, how do they get involved? What types of things? I know there's a lot that Crime Stoppers does, and there's a lot of wheels that work together to make it happen. What kinds of things can the community do, or people volunteer, or is it paid positions? What is the entirety of it? How do people get involved?
Well, there's many ways people can get involved. One of the things that we really like is people will volunteer.
Okay.
We attend many, many events. We do a lot of community outreach, and we need people to help work with us at these events. We also love to get seniors involved, seniors mentoring seniors about the dangers of elder abuse and how to report it.
Oh, wow.
It's a real problem within our community, but we want volunteers to help us spread the word. So that's
Right.
certainly another way
Yeah.
that people can get involved as well.
Linda, I'm a bit surprised because when I think of crime, I don't really think of elders, like elder abuse. Our senior population, I never think of them being the victim of something. But that's more prevalent, I guess, than I realized.
It's a huge problem.
Really?
You think about, the different types of elder abuse. For an example, one is financial. Oftentimes, as a parent ages and kids or family members or friends, I'll handle your finances for you, don't you worry.
Yes.
But their ulterior motives aren't necessarily what they should be.
Right.
That's a very common problem.
And that's a crime.
That is a crime.
Wow. Because I guess my naivety, is that for me, crime would be a physical thing. But you're saying it could be financial?
Could be physical as well, or it could be emotional. People telling their elders that, you're losing it. Let me take care of things for you.
Belittling them.
Belittling them, withholding medication. Sometimes, keeping, a senior in the basement, taking over their house and putting them in the basement. There's lots of things that unfortunately our senior population become victims for, and they're embarrassed because they feel that they should know better and they don't want to tell somebody. But it's really important that they step up, or someone steps up on their behalf to report it.
Well, I think when I think about seniors in a home and they've given their whole life to making sure that their kids are doing well in life and, guided them through school or whatever, however they helped them, financially supported them, whatever. And when they get to this age in life, they can't even admit that the situation is bad because they've worked so hard to make it so good from the outside.
And they're embarrassed, right? These are their kids that they've loved and that they feel, as they were nurturing their kids, that when it comes time that their kids would do the same. But unfortunately, that's not always the case.
Right. So we've got abuse against seniors. What about if somebody suspects, say, their neighbor is abusing their children? That'd be something that you'd want people to phone in for. Like, that'd be a good tip.
That would be a phenomenal tip. Our kids are very vulnerable. They don't necessarily know who to call or what's right or what's wrong. And they assume that if their parents are abusing them, that's okay. Well, that certainly is not okay.
Right.
And we will make sure that not only does the child get the help, but also the people that are abusing the children too.
Right.
And it might be something as making sure that they get better parenting skills, or it might be that, we have to get the ministry involved, or, getting the police involved, depending on the severity of it.
So what would be the process? So say someone calls you and it's, say, a woman or a man who's in a domestic abuse situation. Well, just to make it equal, kind of think the misconception out there is that women get abused but men don't. So we'll flip it and we'll say there's a man who's embarrassed to admit that his wife is abusing him and he calls Crime Stoppers. So he calls Crime Stoppers, then what's the next thing that happens for him?
So generally speaking, we don't take victims because as soon as we report it, then we know who
right, they're not anonymous anymore.
Okay. Exactly. But say, for an example, it was a family member that was aware of a domestic violence situation. So we would get the information, we would look at it very quickly and make sure that there was no information that would reveal the identity of the tipster. We would then send it off to the police. And depending if it was a crime in progress, so for an example, if you heard screaming and hitting in a room next door, we would get the police there immediately. We have the ability to respond instantly to make sure that the help is there. But if it's something that is an ongoing issue and there's not personal risk, we would make sure that that information got to the police within 12 hours.
I get it. So you would protect the identity of the tipster.
Always protect the tipster.
But getting the information of who is actually in trouble, that's okay because you're trying to help them.
Correct.
That's the distinction.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's wonderful to know. So Crime Stoppers is able to get in contact with non-emerge as well, because there's emergencies, but sometimes we've just got neighbors that are just really making our lives difficult. Is that something that someone would call Crime Stoppers for?
Yes, as long as it's a crime. I mean, sometimes neighbors don't get along and, we don't get involved in that kind of thing. But if there's threats, for an example, we would get involved.
Okay. Yeah, because oftentimes you see neighbors kind of getting a little bit hostile with each other and then it escalates.
Yes.
And then it can get to a very ugly level. So in order to get that finished before it gets to that level, Crime Stoppers could possibly be
We absolutely could. And even though, sometimes people aren't sure, is it a crime or isn't it a crime? Call us, let us decide what to do with it. Because, you're right. Sometimes it might not be now, but it could be something that escalates. And at least the police then have the detail to understand where this has come from.
Right, almost like a case with all
Yes.
the notes. Let's talk about cold cases. Have you solved any cold cases with Crime Stoppers?
We've solved many, and I can't talk specifically about them because oftentimes a lot of our cold cases are pretty high-profile cases.
Okay.
And if you're going to commit a crime of that severity, you probably don't tell a lot of people.
Right.
So we get the information, but I can tell you we've had some great successes.
Okay. And have you had tipsters call in about gangs? Is that
Oh,
something-
we get a lot of
You do?
calls. I would guess, on an average year, more than 1,000 tips about gang activity.
Wow.
And we've also run some very successful campaigns around illegal guns. And those aren't the guns that could be that aren't registered, but these are weapons that should not be in anybody's home.
Yeah.
And we've been able to get a lot of those confiscated as a result of Crime Stoppers tips.
Amazing that you're able to do this, because this is doing some really good work. Plus, it's taking the pressure off of the police.
Totally.
Yeah, I think that sometimes the police is overwhelmed, and this helps to almost like triage, I guess, in a way.
It does. And when you think the police can't be everywhere, and just thinking for a moment, Surrey, because we're talking here in Surrey today, Surrey is as big as Vancouver, Richmond, and Burnaby combined. And although we've got an excellent police force here, they can't be everywhere.
No.
It's just so big. So if you see something, the best way that we can help the police is provide them with that intelligence.
Right. And I know that you're here in the capacity of Executive Director of Metro Vancouver Crime Stoppers, but you're also City Councillor Linda Annis. So tell me, being a councillor and doing the role at Crime Stoppers, how do you balance this? It's a lot of work. Both are a lot of time. We see you at all the events. So how are you managing this?
I work a very long day.
Yeah.
I start very early. I'm always up at 5 a.m. and usually work for a few hours. And I have 2 dogs that kind of set the schedule after that for at least an hour walk if they can get it. And then I carry on with my day and work well into the evening.
Yeah.
And the other piece about, Crime Stoppers as well, we're not a Monday to Friday operation. So I would say virtually every weekend I'm also working on Crime Stoppers materials as well.
Right. So you're nonstop all the time. So even if I ask you how do you make it work, you just make it work.
You just make it work, right? When
Yeah.
you're passionate about what you do, you just want to get it done, right?
Well, I think a lot of our viewers might know that you work with Crime Stoppers, but if they didn't know, now they know.
Yes.
You're helping the city as a city councillor, and you're helping the community as executive director for Crime Stoppers and making a big difference. You also do the voiceovers for a lot of the videos, I feel.
I do. I
Yeah.
do a lot of video and PSAs for Crime Stoppers too.
Wonderful. You're doing great work. Thank you for coming and talking to us today. I know if you want to give a message to the community, they'd love to hear from you. So you can look right in that camera there and give them your message.
Well, I would just like to say that, in my capacity as Executive Director for Crime Stoppers, we really need your help. If you see something suspicious, don't hesitate. Don't think, well, maybe should I or shouldn't I call? Just call us at 1-800-222-TIPS or visit our website, www.solvecrime.ca. As small as you think the information might be, leave it to us to decide whether or not it's good information or not. You'd be quite surprised. Sometimes when you think something is so inconsequential, it can be just that tip that closes the case.
So one more time, Linda, that number is 1-800-222-TIPS.
1-800-222-TIPS, or our website is www.solvecrime.ca.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming to the studio today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. ਇਸੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਝ ਗਲਤ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਕੋਈ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਕਿਹਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੋਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ 1-800-222-TIPS 1-800-222-TIPS ਸੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਫੋਨ ਨੰਬਰ ਤੇ ਫੋਨ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਸਕਰੀਨ ਤੇ ਲਾ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ 115 ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਸੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਗੁਆਂਢੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਘਰ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ ਰਿਸ਼ਤੇਦਾਰ ਕੋਈ ਦੋਸਤ ਐਨੀਥਿੰਗ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਪਰਸਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਨਾਮ ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਿਰਫ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਲੈਣੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਨੋਨਿਮਸ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਪਰ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰੋਗੇ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਫॉर ਵਾਚਿੰਗ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੋਨੀਆ ਵੈਸਟ ਵਿਲ ਸੀ ਯੂ ਅਗੇਨ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ